This video is brought to you by the No Fear community.
Professor Martha Maznevski is the MBA Program Director at IMD, one of the top MBA programs in the world. Welcome.
Thank you.
What can you tell us about your personal background?
I'm Canadian. I grew up in Toronto, which is the most multicultural city in the world. And as I was growing up, I really developed a passion, not just for understanding cultural differences and globalization, but for using it as a resource and an opportunity for more innovation and for solving complex problems. So I think that's the most important thing that's been a passion all my life, is to look at globalization as an opportunity and figure out how we can get more from it.
Do you see the PlayStation generation and digital cowboys as the next phase in globalization?
Absolutely, and I'm really jealous of them.
In what way?
Because they grew up with the assumption that the world is globalized. And of course, they're facing all kinds of complex issues, and they know that the world is complex, which, you know, my generation growing up, we had a lot more assumptions of simplicity. So it may seem a little bit strange to be jealous of them, but they really see this, they take for granted interdependence, they take for granted connectedness in a way that for those of us older, it requires a mind shift. And I love seeing what they do with that connectedness. And that's what's fun about working with them in the MBA program too. What
is the main thing you have learned from them?
The main thing I've learned from them is about nonlinearness. I find it's this PlayStation generation, and I think it's about connecting through the internet, but it's also how you learn to play a game on the PlayStation. It's very nonlinear. Nobody gives you the instruction manual, or if they do, you never read it, about how to go from this room to this room to this room and collect these goals. You just go and you try. I mean, in my day, you go and you try, you lose a quarter. Today, you go and you try and you just plug it in again and you just keep trying. And so because they learn in nonlinear ways, they have a lot of nonlinear views of the world. So nonlinear views of careers, nonlinear views of what a company should be, of industries, of growth, of the relationship between government and business, just nonlinear views of everything. And I think that really sets them up well for the future.
How are digital cowboys changing leadership education? How are they changing your program?
They're challenging us a lot, right? Because they want to bring in more into the program, and we're having to respond to that. You know, whereas we used to have cases or textbooks with maybe some guest speakers, we're doing a lot more live cases now. So we'll have somebody come in from a company, maybe even have them come in virtually and say, here's what's going on in my company right now. And here's the situation that I need to resolve right now. And it's very exciting because we can bring them in from anywhere. But for us, it's about also letting go some assumptions about what does teaching material need to look like? How finished does it need to be before we actually teach with it? And it's more challenging for us to kind of bring these assumptions in live.
You have used the terms simplify and amplify as a way of tackling uncertainty in organizations. Could you explain a little bit about what you mean by that?
Yeah, I get really worried when I see companies react to the complexity in the environment by simplifying too much. Because we know from evolutionary biology and a lot of other places that if you simplify, you don't adapt. You become very adapted to a particular situation, but if the situation changes, you can't adapt to it. And in order to be adaptable, to be flexible, to take advantage of opportunities, you actually need to be complex. The challenge, though, is if you're too complex, then you implode on yourself because you spend so much time managing your complexity that you can't manage anything else. And so the concepts that I'm using are simplify and amplify. You need to simplify some things and then create variation on everything else. The other way, it's the kind of more leadership principle way I'd like to talk about it is Hercules meets Buddha. Okay, we need Hercules. Hercules is the take control, take charge. But Hercules was a very simplified, simple character. You know, when you read the Hercules myths, there was not too much complex about Hercules. Okay, and so we need to be Hercules about some things, but we also need to be Buddha. We need to be much more complex about what we accept in terms of variation. We need to bring our whole selves, and we need to create environments where other people bring their whole selves so that we can amplify and create variation. And the trick, I think, in managing in this new, more complex environment is Hercules meets Buddha, and simplify and amplify, and do both of those things at the same time.
How does the Hercules meets Buddha theory apply to the challenges corporations are facing with the rise of digital cowboys?
Well, so I think one of the dilemmas with the digital cowboys is they're all Buddha and no Hercules. Right? And so it's hard to coordinate all of the digital cowboys into a concerted effort going forward somewhere. And at some point you need to bring them together and align them so that you're moving forward. And I think that's a bigger challenge. But see, it's a very different challenge from previous generations.
What is the best way for business leaders to put these theories into practice in the corporate world?
Well, first of all, to be aware of them, and you know, it's very easy for Hercules to try and beat up Buddha, and in fact, it might work quite well, at least in the short term, until you find out that you haven't adapted very well. And so, the hardest thing for managers to do actually is to hold off on trying to be Hercules about everything. And so then, as a management team, as a leader, you really need to sit down and say, what are the very few things that I need to be Hercules about? And then you really need to be Hercules. You really need to simplify those. But then how can I create curiosity about the other things? How can I encourage collaboration? How can I bring together networks and empower opportunities in a Buddha-like way on everything else? So, but it's that first discussion is what are the few things that are really important for me to be Hercules about, and it's not everything.
You said you're jealous of digital cowboys.
Yeah.
If you were a digital cowboy yourself, just graduating, starting your business career, what kind of a career would you like to have?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. Certainly in emerging markets, you know, someplace where the rules haven't been invented yet. Something on the nexus between social services and creating opportunities with profit-oriented business. So what we call social entrepreneurship, but really, you know, a business that's making a difference in the society, which is, as I said, it's one of the things I love about these digital cowboys, that they don't think of social entrepreneurship as something different from regular entrepreneurship or as something different from social services. So I think absolutely it would be something in the nexus there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This video is brought to you by the No Fear community.